Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming. It's good to quote unquote be here and see everyone again. And we're really excited to have our first writers in animation panel in Rise Up Animation. As everybody knows, like Rise Up Animation was started with, we're like animators and artists and that kind of stuff. And we've been trying to sort of branch out into other fields of like production, editing, and I'm really excited about this writing in animation panel just because, I'm putting on my learning cap as well. I wouldn't say I'm an aspiring writer. I would love to know more about the nitty gritty, the meat and potatoes of what it's like in the writer's room in animation. So I'm really excited to be here with our guests. I wanted to thank our sponsors at Sony Pictures Animation. Thank you guys. Check out Mitchell's and the Machines if you haven't already. Have you guys seen that?
It's so great.
Yeah. Oh,
if you guys haven't
seen it twice.
It's really
funny. So funny. Directed by our friend Mike Rianda of Sony Pictures Animation, who did for the panelists who don't know, like he did this 4 session like story thing all throughout the month of November while we were all in quarantine. It was amazing.
Oh, wow.
So really fun film, really well written, and yeah, Sony Pictures is killing it. They have so much cool stuff coming up. So thank you guys.
I know.
Sony.
More Spider-Verse.
More Spider-Verse. They got that one where it's like, I can't remember what it's called, like Demon Hunters, like
Oh yeah, it's the K-pop band Battling Demons.
Yeah,
Ooh.
and I'm like,
I've seen that.
and I'm like, oh my god, that's amazing. Jeez, I want to work on that. But yeah, let's get started. So this panel, thank you everyone for coming, by the way. And this panel is being co-moderated by the wonderful Angela Entzminger. Pew pew pew.
It's sound effects. That's awesome.
yeah, that was a natural sound effects. Angela is a TV writer and artist specializing in comedy and action adventure. Angela works as a freelance writer on my adventures with Superman for HBO Max. That's cool. So you're working around the clock, you're burning the midnight oil.
Not quite yet. I had some meetings. Gonna have some more meetings soon.
Cool.
Lots of Zoom meetings.
You cool? Sure you love that. You don't have that Zoom fatigue yet?
I feel like I peaked and now I'm back on the Zoom train. So
yeah. So Angela also is a writer on Santiago of the Seas for Nickelodeon, and she's working as a full-time storyboard revisionist on the Emmy Award-winning series The Loud House, which I love. I love that show. It's really funny. I just try to study that show. Her work also includes writing and illustrating comics for the Loud House graphic novels, and creating the Animated Journey podcast, which if it's available, you guys should check it out. It's really cool. And the Glitch Text Rewatch podcast. So I think we all can see that Angela is a slacker and she's very lazy. And she should get her butt in gear and start to.
I'm gonna get my comeuppance anytime now. I need to start working harder. Need to do more.
Angela will be co-moderating this panel with me.
Awesome. Thank you, Bobby, for that introduction. And I would like to introduce Talia Rothenberg. Talia is a Jewish and Latinx writer who was born and raised in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And her writing credits include the upcoming Netflix Spanish language series Rebelled, which is coming out 2019. And
Rebelde.
Thank you, because I'm looking at the comment. I'm not going to pronounce that correctly, so thank you very much. And Nickelodeon Santiago of the Seas. And her original reggaeton pilot, Flaca, is currently in development at Eugenia.
Uh-oh.
Oh, no.
Is it, where is it in development?
Oh,
Never
no.
look back.
Oh, sorry.
Back.
We lost you
so
at
funny?
Eugenio.
Oh, no. Well, anyway, let me repeat. She's got a show in development. She sold a feature pitch, you guys. It is a YA
Salud.
supernatural romance, never look back, to Amazon Studios. Talia is killing it on all fronts. Welcome, Talia. So glad that you are here today.
Thank you, Angela, and thank you for having me. I wouldn't be here without her, but I have to say this girl is making moves, so I only aspire to follow in her footsteps.
That's very nice for you to say, but you're killing it. It's awesome. Take it away again, Bobby.
Aman is a writer-performer at the UCB Theater in Los Angeles. Oh man, that's awesome. He has performed sketch and improv comedy from New York, to California and everywhere in between. Aman has written for the screen, the stage, and most important, the internet. He's currently a staff writer on My Adventures with Superman. So welcome, Aman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be amongst all of you. It's going to be fun.
So one thing I'm learning is like writers do 10 things all at once. Anyway, we can keep going. I'm just kind of blown away by like the multitasking that's happening here. Go ahead, Cassie.
We will get into that. So then we also have with us Cassie Soliday, and Cassie is a writer and cartoonist. Most recently, she worked her way up from script coordinator to staff writer on Disney Junior's Puppy Dog Pals, which is an adorable show. All of y'all should watch it. She also produces the podcast Ink and Paint Folk, available on iTunes now, so download it after today's show. And the show celebrates women and non-binary folk who are working in animation. Welcome, Cassie. So glad to have you here today.
Yeah.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. And then our last but not least guest, Jeannette Lara, is a writer whose credits include Rainbow High and is currently writing on season 2 of Santiago and the Seas and the upcoming PBS Kids animated show Alma's Way. Wow, well done. Can I say multitasking? Jeannette actively develops original content targeted at a variety of audiences such as bridge, kids, young adult, and adult. Wow, that's crazy. She's also a charter member of Latinx in Animation. Woo!
Yeah.
An organization that focuses on sharing resources and tools to help promote Latinx talent in the animation industry, which I think is dope. I love those people, and I love MAGs. So yeah, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here so much. We really appreciate it. Yeah, let's get started on the conversation. So where do you want to start, Ange?
All right, so we want to briefly have everyone just share how they became writers, their breaking in stories before we go into how it's done and what we do. So Cassie, let's just go ahead and start with you. How did you become a television writer?
Okay. Definitely didn't think you were going to call on me first. But, so I'm from a very rural, small town farming community in Southern Illinois. I went to school for animation actually in Chicago. And while I was studying animation, there really wasn't a lot of writing classes. You just kind of took an idea, storyboarded it, then animated it. And that's all great. But I had to go to the film and video floor, because there was just like 2 floors, to learn those things. And it wasn't quite the writing I wanted to learn, because like I wanted to do comedy, and they were all like, what hurts you the most? Write about that, which there's a place for that, but that's not what I wanted. So I went to Second City and Annoyance Theaters. As a great comedy scene in Chicago. So I studied as an intern and got free classes and took whole bunch of things and did improv and sketch comedy and any class that I could get myself into. So I got an internship at Nickelodeon after school. I took like 3 times applying to get in, and luckily the 3rd time was a charm. And I interned at Nickelodeon in 2011. So after that, I was like, okay, well, it took a lot of money just to come out here for this internship. So it'll probably take me a long time to save that up again. So I just stayed in California and got a job out here at Disneyland to figure it all out. So I was taking workshops. At that time I was still doing art and writing, not sure where I wanted to fit in. And luckily I got into production to see all the variety of positions and started to realize that writing is definitely where I want to be. And so then I had to find a studio that had a script coordinator role, because at the time I was at Disney TVA, and they didn't have any, like, they didn't have the assistant, or what's it called, the apprentice writer position yet. They have that now, and they don't have like script coordinators in the, like, I work on a show sense. It's like a whole studio has like two or three, I think, right, Bobby? Something like that. Anyways, so ended up on Puppy season 1, worked my way over to script coordinator and then staff writer. And that's super condensed. Obviously, there's a lot of pain and tears.
Sounds
but,
easy.
Yeah.
Sounds easy.
You all can do it. Hopefully you cry less.
Sounds easy. Who do you want to popcorn it to somebody else? Cassie?
Yeah. Okay. Let's go to Jeannette.
Damn you. For me, and I'll shorten mine, I moved to LA. Let's start there. And I knew that I wanted to get into the animation industry, but I didn't know how. So I had to figure a lot of stuff out. And I did everything that I shouldn't have, which was, learn about other stuff other than animation. Because again, it's like at that time, there weren't a lot of, I think WIA existed. Rise Up, I don't think was around. And you had all these other organizations that were kind of like, tethering, like it wasn't such a huge thing that it's become, I think, within the last few years. So finding out information, like how to get in, how to break in, that was a little bit more challenging. So I did everything else. I was a PA. I was a PA for Basketball Wives, by the way, LA. I also took on, being an assistant, like for La Leaf, which is like the Latino International Film Festival. And I just took on any opportunity that I could to learn more about what I wanted to do, right? And then I finally ended up in development for this independent producer. And at some point, and basically what happened was I met my writing partner there. But at some point, what happened was it was just time, and I had to take another risk, right? Aside from coming here to LA, the risk of, do I leave the development space and just dive into writing? And that's what I did. And then I went to depression because I abandoned the job, and I'm thinking, this is the worst thing I could have done. But it ended up working out. I wrote a feature in 2015, and we quarterfinalists for the Nickel. And then nothing really happened, and we just, I just continued to network, and then I finally got my big break, thanks to an angel, Elise Allen, and she gave me a chance. She read my pilot, and she's like, I like the way you write. Let's hire you. Let's bring you on. And then that just led to other jobs, on Netflix, that's unannounced. I can't talk about it. PBS and all these other, wonderful opportunities.
Awesome. Amazing. Man. Amazing. Thank you, Jeannette. Thank you for sharing your story.
I'm done.
I'm done. Goodbye,
Let's take Aman.
Hey, Aman.
Hey, thank you. So it's, mine is really short. I'm fairly new. This is my first this is my first writing job in animation. And let's see, where do I start? I always was in love with film and television and writing, and would write little plays, and then went to college on a business scholarship, so I couldn't go to the film program. So me and my friends decided to just be the rebels that would shoot stuff on our own and just like enter it into the school film stuff. And that was fun, and that led me to coming over here with my friend to Los Angeles. And during college and during my time in Denver, I did stand-up, a little bit of stand-up and some improv. And I came here to write for TV, got distracted by performing, and years and years later, eventually came back to writing for TV. But in that time, I spent with the UCB and all these independent little theaters doing comedy every night, just getting up there, eventually writing pilots and doing the thing where I didn't realize that I thought I was writing for live action, but I was 100% writing for animation. It would be like, yeah, well, then of course you just walk through that door and you're just going to walk through it and there's going to be a shape of your body in the door. And so I would submit it everywhere and got my break from on the Superman show with Josie. Josie read my pilot. She got it from somewhere and she brought me on. And I'm really fortunate.
Right on.
Josie, Brendan, and Jake. Yes, I have to say them all.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right. Well, there's no one left to popcorn it to. No, I'm just kidding. Talia.
Hi. So I'm Talia. I'm from Puerto Rico originally. I did a lot of theater growing up, and that's what I kind of thought I wanted to do. And I went to NYU to do that, was in that department. And pretty much very quickly figured that like what I actually wanted to do was like curate the content and sometimes perform, but for the most part be the person sort of shaping the content. And I just really didn't think that there was any Latinx content out there. I still don't think that it currently exists that sort of speaks to my experience. And I think that experience of like intersectionality that happens a lot within, Latinidad. So I just started making it myself. I came out here with a web series that I did with a friend from LA who lived out here, and I had never been out to LA. And I just flew back one summer and shot something with her. And then we kind of naively made this plan for me to move to LA and sort of figure out how to turn that web series into a TV show. Wow. And we actually went through that whole process. And we sold it to E1. And during that process, we had a falling out that had been like a long time coming through, just me kind of driving the project for the most part and feeling resentment towards that. So that was a point at which I was like part of a writing duo, and then all of a sudden I wasn't, and it was just me. And it's like, okay, well, what is it that I want to do? And sort of like going back to that initial mission statement of like doing stories about Latinidad, like I kind of decided that I wanted to figure out how to do that in a way that felt like commercial and, for lack of a better word, light, but like transcendent because of that. And so that was really my focus. I went through being an assistant at a management company. I went to being a writer's assistant. I got kind of like you guys mentioned, just got an opportunity through a Mexican showrunner, Natasha Ibarra, who believed in me and was like, I'm doing this remake of this beloved show that I grew up watching that is super cheesy and like a Glee-esque kind of, YA soap. And so that was my first staffing job. That was in 2019. And then kind of came back to I don't know if you guys all know, but there was sort of a non-WGA strike. So writers who were baby writers like me and like Aman, like basically had to not have representation or get penalized for trying to go out on jobs, because all of a sudden all these mid-level writers and upper-level writers were saying, we can do this without our agents. And so they, of course, have a network of people to lean on and give them jobs, sort of as Jeannette is speaking to. Like, the key to this is really kind of finding your way in, and then work begets work. As soon as you start doing good work for good people, your name starts floating around and you get invited to panels like this. And so I was doing that, and then I fell into being a writer's assistant one more time for this woman who's awesome, fabulous, Carol Mendelsohn, who co-created the original CSI franchise. And I was with her for just under a year when I saw an opportunity to join this Nickelodeon animated show on a Latina TV writers group. So I think that's part of the conversation, but like I would encourage everyone here to find like those niche groups on Facebook where it's like Latinx writers, LGBTQ writers, or just the natural, like here are all the writing fellowship posts. Like it's just a great resource for sort of what everything is available to you, what the options are, and just being able to ask questions and find groups of people to read your work, et cetera, et cetera. So through one of those Facebook groups, I found this opportunity and I submitted my work and had an interview. And then from then it just turned into a job opportunity. And it was great because I had never wanted to work in animation. I love animation, but I never had even considered it as a possibility. And I kind of just fell into it. and it's amazing and I love it, and it's fun to be on probably one of the only Latinx shows on television that has like Afro-Latino protagonists, and they're 8 years old and they're cartoons, but I think that's amazing. And that's pretty much everything in a nutshell, I think.
Amazing.
Awesome. Love it.
Ange, do you want to get into the meat and potatoes part of it?
Sure. Well, let me real quick say how I got into writing, because
Yes,
I think
so
a lot of
yes.
people probably know, at least from the podcast, like how I got the boards, but probably not scripts. So this is the super short Cliff's Notes version. So born in Cali, lived in Texas. I got a communications degree. I moved to New York to work in publishing. I worked in publishing for about 6-7 years. I got really bored with it, but I always loved cartoons. So I joined Women in Animation in New York and ASIFA East and the Museum of Comic and Cartoon Art. And while there, that's how I learned about both storyboarding and script writing. And a friend recommended that I write a script for the Nickelodeon writing program. And I wrote my very first script in Microsoft Word using macros. I did not know how script formatting worked, but I had a really good time. And then after that, I took 2 script writing classes and kept writing scripts and kept practicing boards. Moved to Denver, worked in publishing, moved to California, went back to school, got an MFA in 2D animation and storyboarding, worked as a reality TV show PA, interned at Pixar, was a co-president of Women in San Francisco, moved down to LA, was a PA for another reality television show, got a bunch of temp jobs, started my podcast, met my friend Chris Wimberly, who also had a podcast. He recommended me to a friend at Nickelodeon, interviewed for the job, regaled them with all my horror stories from reality television show PA jobs, and they said, oh, you don't have to do any of that. All you have to do is spreadsheets. And I said, I can do spreadsheets. So that's how I got my job at Loud House, and I moved up from a PA to a PC to a revisionist. And the entire time I was writing scripts. I pitched for the Nick Shorts program. It didn't get picked up, but I had such a good time with pitching that I turned my short into a pilot, had a lot of fun writing the pilot. So I wrote a bunch of other pilots. And then I met my future manager at an event, and we just started talking to each other. And she used to run different animation events around town, and they went on Zoom while, COVID was going on. And during one of our Zoom chats, she asked, what have you been doing? And I said, I've been writing pilots. And she said, would you like me to read one of your pilots? And I said, sure. And I gave her a pilot. She really liked it. I gave her some other pilots, and she said, would you like to be represented by me and my management partner? And I said, yes, that sounds awesome. I would love that. That sounds great. And then she recommended me to Nikki Lopez, the creator of Santiago of the Seas. And then she also recommended me to find folks at Warner Brothers. And that's how I met Josie and Jake and Brendan, who are heading up my adventures with Superman. And that's how I got my writing jobs. So that is the short version of my journey here.
Amazing. So easy.
Yeah, so easy. No tears at all. No tears or fists at the sky. It's all, no. There's a lot more that goes into it. There's a lot of stuff, and we could probably all talk about just our journeys. But now, to Bobby's point, we will get into, like you said, the meat and potatoes. So a lot of people ask, and this can be for anybody on the panel, everybody on the panel, just what exactly is the difference between like staff writer and freelance writer, and what are some of the different things that entails?
Yeah, I can answer this. I'm currently on staff. So what that means is you are part of a permanent group of writers who are not only delineating what the entire season of the show looks like, but are editing each other's episodes and pitching on story ideas for those episodes, and essentially helping problem solve loopholes and just hitting brick walls and stuff amongst a group. So television is inherently very collaborative, which is what I personally love about it. It's not you alone in the dark searching for the answers. It's you coming up with an idea, and if you have a really good room, people topping that idea and like generously giving it to you. So yeah, that's the difference, I think, between being a staff and then being freelance, which is you get brought into that ethos, into that room to essentially service one episode that for the most part they have conceptualized and have handed off to you. So while you are definitely part of the process of figuring out what that episode looks like and ultimately channeling the voice of that room / the show to write that episode, you are servicing ultimately the bigger idea of the room and the production itself.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. And then within that, when you guys are pitching ideas, what is that process like when you're pitching like episode ideas, when you're actually in the room itself?
All right, I'll answer again. Essentially, I mean, there is no process per se. In normal times, it's like, you know, you have a giant whiteboard and you're just scribbling ideas, and there's some writer's assistant who's like trying to keep up, taking as many notes as possible of every single thing you say, because somewhere within that, there's something that is usable or might be the kernel of something that you need to go back to sort of problem solve the rest of the episode. But it really just is like a group of hopefully very different people, so that you have differences of opinion and just different perceptions of the world, so that when someone, you know, puts out a question or says an idea, they're not afraid to sort of say something stupid. I think like sometimes we preface it with like, this is like bad pitch, or like this is like the really stupid version of that idea, but like can we figure out what the sophisticated version of this is? And it's like I would just shy away from even framing it that way to begin with, because like there are really no stupid ideas. Like the point is we start from the ground level of the elevator and somehow we get all the way to the top. But sometimes you get down the journey and you have to kind of look back to figure out where it kind of got away from you, because sometimes you run the risk of like everybody's putting something into the mix and all of a sudden it's become this big thing. And sometimes it's all about sort of railing it back and asking yourself, like, what is the simplest version of this? Or like, what is the simplest answer to this question? So it is a balance, I think, of literally going as far away as possible and then finding ways to then rein that back in.
Got it. Yeah.
I wanted to add, because our show was, when I was staff writer, it was season 4 and 5. So like we had established all the pieces that we were playing with in the, you know, play box, what's it called? Toy box. And so like our story editor would just kind of send us off on our own to write a bunch of springboards, which are just kind of like, you know, 2 to 4 line paragraphs, kind of act 1, act 2, and a hint at act 3, but you're not telling them how it ends, just so that there's room to grow from there. And that's what we sent to network. But he would send us off and we'd write 80 in a week. And, you know, after you write 80 ideas, there's going to be a lot of crap in there, but you're also going to have to pull from really weird, dark places of your soul. And there might be like really strange things that come out of it that can turn into an episode.
Sorry,
so
Cassie,
it was kind of, yeah.
Like when you say springboards, I know this is an obvious question for like the writers in the room, but like what is, can you talk about like essentially what a springboard is?
Yeah, it's like a paragraph basically giving act 1, act 2, and a hint at act 3. At least on our show, that's what it was. I think other shows might do a little bit longer paragraphs that go through the whole thing. But is that clear? Is
it just kind of the idea of the episode? I guess
yes.
Conceptually, that's what I was kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's a little bit more than a log line, essentially. But if you think of it as the log line as the synopsis of what the episode is, that's probably the most fundamental way of thinking of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Just as a preface, I'm going to be asking a lot of kindergarten questions.
Please, yeah.
Like in this,
Please do, Bobby.
That's good.
Please do, because these are the same questions that everyone has on their mind and that we see on every Discord.
I'm like that guy that'll be like, springboard, got it. And then inside I'm like, what's this?
We call it a premise paragraph in our room. So I think it's just, you know, room to room, whatever, that all encompassing.
Yeah, our premises were like 1 page after we broke it together in the room. So yeah, it's interesting to see the differences between rooms too.
Yeah, and the Loud House, I know their springboards are like 1 to 3 paragraphs too, and they call them springboards. So it just, and that's at the same studio. So it just depends.
Yeah.
Can I just put this out there? Like the pitching ideas part of this whole writing process seems like the most vulnerable, scary part of the whole process, I think. Do you, Jeannette, do you have any experiences where you're like, okay, I'm going to pitch this springboard, I'm going to pitch this premise, this log line, and you're like, the night before, I'm just kind of like, what, is this any good? What's your process?
Yeah. I mean, I think any part of the writing process can be very vulnerable, especially when you're having to speak about it. But I mean, for me, I feel comfortable once I really get a sense of what the show is. But in my case, all the shows that I was on before Santiago are all new shows. So it's one of those processes where you're trying to figure out, you're hoping that you're hitting, like what is it that they're looking for? Because they kind of give you a vague idea, like this is what the show's going to be about. These are the characters. Here's the world. And usually they'll say like, yeah, anywhere like pitch about, 3 to 5. I'm the type of person that I'll write 8 or 10 or sometimes even more. Because you come to realize that a lot of those ideas, either somebody else has thought about it or there's just going to, slowly get eliminated. So, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think for me personally, it's always nerve-wracking. But if I feel prepared, then, and also keeping in mind that these are other people that feel just the same way that I do, and they're here to help you. Like, I think that really helps the process as well.
Yeah, everyone's your ally.
Yeah, and I've been very fortunate to have great writing rooms. I've been spoiled, which means that what's going to happen is I'm going to get onto this one bad writing room. It's bound to happen, but yeah.
Aman, it must be, is that the pitch part of it natural for you just because you're kind of used to the performing aspect of it? Does that help? Do you kind of feel like your experience with the performing and the improv and that kind of stuff to get in the room to pitch your idea?
I think it does. I hesitate to say anything definitively, like give advice and all, because I'm like, well, we got to see what happens after this 10 weeks. But I think it helps a lot because in improv, at least for me, you pitch anything and there are no mistakes. It's just whatever they use is just what you use. There are no like, oh, crud, I said something that's so dumb. It's like, as a good group, you go, oh, how do we use that? And so I'm sure everyone has heard of yes anding, but I feel like that really helps me in the room when I go, I have the opposite issue. I have to stop myself from talking where I'm like, because it feels like, oh, let's play. But with yes anding, it's, you just to go, okay, what's here? How can I add to it? How can I clarify it? How can I push this idea forward? And still just keep it going. So that's one of the improv like foundations. I feel like it helps in pitching with jokes and things. Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah.
Angie, do we want
Yeah, so then I want to go on to our next topic because this is actually in the Q&A, but it's also something I hear all the time. So difference between live action versus animated scripts, but also just what different animated scripts look like for different age groups. So would anybody like to tackle that question?
Yeah, I could talk to that. So they are and they're not different. Like formatting wise, a lot of it is the same. I think the difference is going to come once you're on the show, because, the way one showrunner wants to, or, the head writer, however they want to format that script might look different from any other show. And with live action, although I think it still sticks to the typical formatting, where with animation, there's a lot of more cheats, I like to say. But also, again, like I go back to, it just depends the show, because for one show, yeah, I won't say which one specifically, but they would come back to us and actually say, hey, so we need you to be a little bit more descriptive. We need you to be a little bit more intentional with what these characters are doing, because we need the animators in this other country to understand that. So I think it's just, you know, like to what Angela's point is, that it just varies from show to show, but they don't look a whole lot different. I just think that there's a lot of more, just to use the meat and potatoes, there might be a lot more action, you know, a lot more description, especially if you're creating a world, a fantasy type world. So I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, I think to add to Jeanette's point, there's always stuff happening in scene. You can't really just do like a walk and talk scene, or just like a, you know, family gathered around the table having a conversation scene. In animation, the network's always going to push you to have like visual things happening, because especially when you're talking about like Bridge and those younger audiences, it's all about keeping those kids' attention for as long as you can. And if you lose them in a conversation or an explanation, like, you know, we like to keep it to no more than 3 sentences for a line of dialogue, because it's just all about capturing attention in an age that's obviously very it's just easy to have your attention span just split into something else. So yeah, there's much more activity, I would say, in an animation script. But other than that, they're pretty much exactly the same.
Yeah, just piggybacking on that as well. It's just having written sketch and some live action, the note that I've gotten before is like, you can take away some of this description. We'll find it later on. We'll when we shoot it, we don't know what the location is. We're figuring out this kind of stuff. Budgetary type notes. And from what I noticed in the animation, it's like, oh yeah, put that in there and make it clear to the storyboard artists. And it's very freeing as far as I'm experiencing it.
Wow. Yeah.
All true. And I'd like to add too, just in case anyone is curious about some of the parlance here. So with the different age groups, when we're talking about Bridge and whatnot, so in general, we're talking about writing scripts. So preschool, you're looking at 0 to 5. Bridge tends to be 4 to 8. And then you have with kids, it's either 6 to 11 if you're talking about something like Disney Channel or Nickelodeon cable. It's branching out to 6 to 14 for streaming services because of HBO Max and Netflix. You can skew a little bit older. And then adults, which are 18 plus. For whatever reason, there's no real 14 to 18 demographic, even though obviously people are watching animation at that age. But that's what we're talking about. And that's something else to consider when you're talking about description and what you're putting in your scripts and the types of scripts you want to write. And that actually leads to the next thing I wanted us to talk about is specs and pilots, is consider your audience, because something that would work really well, you know, for preschool might not necessarily work well for kids 6 to 14, might not necessarily work so well for like adult animation. So speaking of specs and pilots, I mean, I know that as far as I know we've all written specs and pilots, we've written different kinds of things. So one of the questions that I hear a lot from people is, what should they write? Like if they want to get an animation, you know, and there's no right or wrong answer to this, but in general, what do you think makes for a really good like spec script sample or a really good pilot sample?
I mean, first and foremost, just write the thing that you want to write, because it doesn't matter. Like I fell into animation and I had a YA, you know, dramedy pilot. That is what got me the job. And because there were cultural elements in that pilot that transcended genre and, you know, demonstrated to that team that I was the right person to join the staff. So honestly, first and foremost, write the thing you want to write. If you see it as animation, write it in animation. If you see it as live action, write it in live action, because ultimately people don't really care about like fitting you into the box. They just want to know who you are and they want to know that it's good. So write the thing that you're going to invest most of yourself in and that you feel passionate about. And that feels like you, whether that's because it's an identity thing or a genre thing or a character dialogue thing. Like just like write the thing that feels most unique and most yourself.
So Talia, and ask this question for the rest of the panel as well. Of just are you consistently pulling from personal experiences of like things that you remember from childhood or people that you know?
Yeah, my preferred genre of writing is way off base as far as like a conversation about animation. And I'm able to apply it to that. But the kinds of stuff that I'm interested in writing are, like an Insecure or a Master of None, like those half-hour dramedies that are identity-centric and that are like subverting the idea of what a ethnicity or race or, person's identity looks like as, something that's binary. I just don't really see that being the case in the world anymore. And I'm a white passing Latina. And so that is a unique identity story that I don't see in film, TV, or media. And I feel
Master of None is my
represented.
North Star.
Never have I ever. Just like shows that like that's like a show about like a girl who wants to be cool and popular, but she happens to be Indian, and that is a perspective that we haven't seen before. So like I think those kinds of shows are really my sensibility, and I think things that sit at that intersection of being like commercially viable. I'm not somebody who takes myself super seriously and is like, oh, I need to write an award-winning drama like Mayor of Easttown. That's not me personally. I'm just all about like universality and like touching as many people's eyeballs as possible. So yeah, for me, it draws from personal experience for sure. It's also just like being a cinephile, honestly. Like the more stuff you watch and the more like educated you are about like storytelling because you're a fan of storytelling, the more you understand innately just sort of the construct of a story. And so for me, yeah, I think I highly recommend like reading things that you watch that you like read your favorite movie like as a script and then watch it and then see like what got cut, like what got changed, like, how that thing that they wrote transcended and became the thing that you saw on screen. I think that is so informative. And as somebody who came from like a theater background of like reading plays and performing, like I understood character, and I think I took a lot of what I had learned from a performative place, sort of similarly to Aman, and like applied it to the actual storytelling. So I think like if you have other gifts and other talents, like bring that into the writing as well. Write what you know could not be the better, more succinct advice, I think. Yeah, write what you know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to add to that as well is definitely write what you know. And to Talia's point, also write what you like. And if you don't know something, just research it. I mean, we have the internet. We have the libraries, you have your friends, your family, your personal experiences. So you can learn about anything. And for me, the way that I figured out what I wanted to write was a combination of all the different shows and all that I love to watch, all the different movies I love to watch, all the songs I love listening to, combined with what I wasn't seeing. And for me, I wasn't seeing a lot of genre shows for kids 6 to 14 that had Black kids, Latinx kids, South Asian kids, East Asian kids, just different colors of kids as the leads. They were the best friend, or they were the weird kid, or they were kind of funny, but they weren't the lead. And so all of my pilots had like Black girl or a Latinx girl or a Black boy or Indian kid as the lead going on some type of crazy adventure with monsters and creatures and magic. And I knew I specifically wanted to write for kids and teens. And so I just focused my pilots on those types of stories and just modeled after the types of shows that I wanted to see. And that's helped me get my jobs because those are the kinds of shows that I'm working on now, are kind of fish out of water, children or young adults that are very diverse, having to deal with weird stuff. So write the kind of thing that you want to see and that you like for an age group that currently exists in television.
I kind of wanted to piggyback off of what Talia and Angela are saying too, is that I found that when it felt natural, the story, that's when it came alive. So I do see and hear of people that they try to write something that is kind of like not exactly their niche, or they're just, they're trying to satisfy an audience. And I find that when you do that, it's going to be a disaster naturally. But if you just trust in, like what they're saying, everything they're saying is like, experience, I think that will come out naturally. Because that was my approach too. I didn't really think about, well, I want to write fantasy, so I'm going to write fantasy, or, let me write about this, half Asian, half, Boricua girl. It was just something that came out. And it was just, once you find that story that's grounded, you'll know for sure.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Aman? Is it the same like workflow for you, or like how do you kind of like brainstorm like what story you're going to tell next?
So how do I braistrome what story I'm going to tell next?
That was the biggest question I've ever heard in my life.
No.
Like, I think I always I just like,
No.
With your next thing that you're going to put out there, is there a process that you go through?
Yeah, but it's not a process I recommend anyone else do. It's just it's
the
just
drinking and the
hard partying, hard everything.
Just hard living.
yeah.
Just a hard life.
Yeah.
No, it's honestly, it's just it's having so many ideas. It's really what sticks around after a long time. So it could be based on any little thing. Usually, I like to base it on some sort of bad joke or something, like what would be the worst title ever, and then I'll sit with that for a while and go, but how could I do that? And so I just like to challenge myself in that way and just have fun with it. Because the quote, I don't remember the quote, but I read something once and it was like, to avoid competition, aim for authenticity, because you can't really find someone just like you. So if you go further inside as opposed to going like, I have to be better than, I think that's where you can find some really, really cool, embarrassing, funny, good stuff. And that's where I go. So it's just hard partying, sitting around, and whatever stays after a year of thinking about stuff.
Like digging deep.
Digging deep, yeah, digging deep. And that's where you get the fun stuff, I think, for myself. Yeah.
Oh, that's so great. That actually leads to the next thing I want to talk about. Speaking of hard partying, which I don't know if this is quite as fun, but networking, the thing that everyone both loves and hates. I think hates is probably a little bit closer, but it's important, especially for writing, because I'm sure for all of you writers out there, aspiring writers, you've probably noticed that writing is like the one job you don't see posted. You'll see storyboards and character design and production and whatnot posted. You are not going to see a writing job posted. I've seen one in the 10 years that I've been here in California. So I wanted to ask you guys how you go about networking, making friends, making colleagues, meeting managers, meeting other writers in a way that you feel good about without it feeling like pulling teeth, or, oh no, I need to ask them to look at my script. But how have you guys approached meeting other people in the industry?
Oh gosh. So I want to say, so networking, especially the older I've gotten, the better I've gotten at it. It just takes practice, but it wasn't something that came natural to me either. It was one of those things that I decided, you know what, I just have to put myself out there. And then kind of like, once you realize that everyone crafts the way you do, it becomes less intimidating. So for instance, my approach is always, and everyone has a different approach. My approach is, I want to connect with somebody that, there's always a potential to maybe work with them, but also have a friendship. And that's something that doesn't get spoken about enough, but also, not to criticize a lot of, students that are coming out of college, but they don't teach y'all how to network properly. a lot of these youths they're approaching people with this give me a job type of attitude. I just graduated, I'm about to graduate, I'm great, I'm awesome, give me this job. And it doesn't work that way. People want to have a relationship. And I'm that type of person that I definitely want to have a relationship with the person I'm connecting with. And for me, it's usually like one-on-one, I prefer. There's other people that they'll do the, hopping from one person to another. But, I think you also have to find your comfort zone when it comes to networking and kind of like figure out like, what do you prefer best? Do you prefer in a group, or do you prefer to just talk to one person that whole night and connect with them? It's almost like dating, right? But yeah, it's like, I was just going with that mindset of don't go in saying, I'm going to network so I can get a job. No, I'm going to network and find my community, connect with people, see if we have any common interests, and realize that, like some fine people, like I met Angela because we were both doing what was it called? It
was the it was like an animation magazine business conference.
So yes.
Yeah, it was an animation conference, but it wasn't an animation conference for artists. It was an animation conference for network executives and people selling shows to networks. And I remember you were just always on top of things. And it was, I want to be her friend because she's like here super early, always doing things, answering people's questions, helping. And it's like, Jeannette would be an awesome person to be friends with.
And then for me, like Angela, like when I met her, she had this huge smile. Like out of everyone, she was the nicest. It didn't matter how long the day had dragged on. She was like always with a big smile, like, she looks nice, I want to talk to her. And so that's how, at least that was my experience.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, nowadays everything is virtual, right? So it's like, for all you introverts out there, like you don't even really have to do much anymore. You can go on LinkedIn and you can go on these Facebook groups and you can, make your own little subgroups and stuff and kind of figure it out and make it as comfortable as you want it. But it's like, I think far more safe to go out on a limb from behind your computer screen than to be at a mixer for happy hour. So like that kind of takes the stress away, I think. I want to also put this out there because it's something that I try to tell as many people as possible if they're interested in pursuing writing. I think a huge part of networking is actually the jobs that you get in the process of trying to become a writer. And I think the most sort of direct way in, I wouldn't say for animation specifically, but just for writing in generally, I think animation, you also have these great options of being a storyboard artist or a production coordinator. But for writing, I would say getting those jobs as assistant jobs out of college at those big agencies and spending a couple of years at those agencies as an assistant on various desks. As Angela was speaking to, like all of the job opportunities that come for writer's assistants come directly from those agencies' clients and get fielded through the agency itself. So it's all completely word of mouth. There's no postings or anything.
Yeah.
And it all happens by virtue of being there. So then what ends up happening is that all of those people that are part of your assistant class then go on to be all of the junior executives at all of these other companies, whether it's in casting, whether it's as a writer's assistant, whether it's in development. And so you end up kind of being part of a fraternity or sorority in the sense that like you have this ingrained network available to you at your fingertips of the next generation of film and television people that are going to rise to these positions as you are. So as you go on your journey of becoming a writer, you'll find that all these people you worked with are also going on their journey of becoming amazing executives, directors, producers. So that's always advice. Like if you're coming out of college or you're thinking of just making a drastic move and just like committing to something, I think the best way that you can just sort of naturally create this like really just spectacular network is going through that process and through those programs.
Right on. That's great.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to add one more thing because that's fantastic. And what Jeannette said was fantastic. And I would like to add, because this directly benefited me, was create projects that involve and help other people, because you end up meeting other people, and through helping people, sometimes you inadvertently also are helped. For example, like when I created the podcast, my goal with my podcast wasn't, this will help me get a job at Nickelodeon. That's not why I started the podcast. The reason I started it was when I went to school, I didn't know of anybody in my age group that was currently working. Everybody that I had heard of, you know, they went to CalArts, which is a good school, and then they got hired at Disney Feature, and then the next 25 years were great. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't the experience of anybody that I personally knew. And so I created the show in order to help other people like myself figure out how they got in. And inadvertently, I ended up making a friend who helped me get in. So making a short, making a podcast, forming a critique group, forming an organization. You know, Brian and Magdiello formed Latinx. Cassie created a podcast. You know, Talia created a film. Aman went and was a part of UCB. Like, join communities and join groups and make stuff that can benefit other people, because then you're actually doing the job that you want. You know, if you want to be a writer, write things with friends, and then see, maybe you can get them filmed or see if they can become a short. So make stuff. I think making stuff is a big part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good segue into just sort of we can close out of like advice to aspiring writers that you guys had. What would you guys, for anyone out there in the attendee crowd, of just kind of like, if they wanted to follow in your footsteps, on what sort of like advice can you leave them with? Like, you know, if you were going to say one thing.
I would say stick to your guns, because you have to, in the beginning, sort of say yes to all of these opportunities so that you can really expand your network and have your name start to be floated around. And just so that you can work, because honestly, like, practice makes perfect. The more you work on something, the more you hone in on your craft, like anything. So I'd say in the beginning, you're gonna have to say yes to everything, but eventually, just stick to your guns, and, you know, like, don't stretch yourself too thin. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Just know what your limitations are. Write the things you want to write, what you write, what you know, write what makes you unique, and protect your art. Don't allow people to come in and, you know, colonize it or turn it into something that is not what you set it out to, the original intention for that work. Like, protect your art.
One of the things that, thank you, Talia. One of the things I've been doing too, I've been trying to do anyway, of like, is to read scripts, right? Read pilots, read things that you love. You know, like, Cassie, do you want to speak to kind of like, read the pilots of the shows that you love, right? I think that was something that you gave in our last AMA, but do you want to elaborate on that? Just like reading scripts.
Yeah, reading scripts, you kind of learn the flow. You want to pay attention to the negative space on your page so it's easily digestible, and that's like something that isn't really story related. It's just kind of like getting the vibe of how everything fits together. I feel like when you're writing, even like the action lines build and your dialogue addresses things, but you don't have to double things up. And this probably doesn't make sense. Oh my gosh. I just feel like everything has to push it forward, right? So there's cause and effect, and it builds. So, and kind of going to sketch comedy, I feel like every scene typically has its own game, or it fits into a bigger game within a sequence of scenes. So there's a lot going on, a lot to track. At the end of a scene, you need to, you know, send it off to the next scene for you motivate into the next part of the story. So you pick up all of that stuff while you're reading other people's scripts. And it can be really difficult to find animation scripts, especially for TV.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like I know Disney Feature sometimes releases theirs. And I think Sony does as well. But if you can get your hands on any TV animation scripts, read them for sure. Yeah.
Right on. Sorry, go ahead, Aman. Go ahead.
Sure. So if I were speaking to myself watching this, not assuming all of you are, unlike me, I need deadlines. So take a class. That's helped a lot. Taking classes, and if you take like a pilot writing class or any kind of class, within that class, you're meeting a bunch of writers and you're getting to hear your work aloud, which helps a lot because you get to know, okay, this is where this kind of drags. And then they'll also tell you that. So on top of your insecurities, they're going to let you know what's not working. But that's all going to help. It's all going to help. And I've taken a number of classes, and those classes have led me to the pilot that got me the job. And it can take as long as it needs to take. I've worked on this one pilot forever, and in its final form, that's the one I got the job with.
Nice. Jeannette, go ahead.
Oh, something that I have to really emphasize is that, you can have a lot of talent. And I think this goes across like for any industry that you're in. But at the end of the day, drive is very important, and not giving up, having a support system too, even if you don't have it from like say family, which, fortunately I do, but, find a system, people that you can surround yourself with that are going to tell you like, you've got this, you can do this. And I know there's a lot of discouraging moments, certainly like we all kind of highlighted our path to here in a positive way. But again, there's like a lot of blood, sweat, and a lot of tears to achieving that dream. So, just don't give up. And again, like drive is so important, and don't be a jerk. I'll leave with that.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one other thing is that before I had gotten to my writing position, I feel like I was kind of meekly writing through. I'm like, oh, I can't wait till I can get to the point where I can like develop stuff and go pitch. And I regret that attitude because I wish I would have just got started sooner. So like even before you get it, like an assistant job or get opportunities, be developing as if you already have those jobs so that you have like this body of work that you can just, hit the ground running when you get in or when you're able to get in the room with your agent. Just take yourself seriously. There's no reason you should be one of the people holding yourself back. There's plenty of people out there to do that for you. So don't do it to yourself.
Awesome. Ange, did you want to get into those resources before we get into the live Q&A?
Yeah, well, I want to give 2 bits of advice, which will also simultaneously answer 2 people's questions in the Q&A here. So Leanne asked a very, very good question, which was, what if people don't want to collaborate on a project? Which I get that. You have this vision, it's a good idea, and you either are not able to find people or people just say no. And my answer to that is do the most that you can on your own and continue to search for people that have a similar vision. Because if you're running your race and you're just running straight ahead towards your goal, because this happened to me, you will eventually find people, but it might take some time. So when I first started script writing and first started boarding, I didn't have anybody to review my stuff for years because I was living in different states where there just wasn't really animation. Animation's not a big deal in Denver, so I didn't have a whole lot of people to look over my stuff. So, but what that ended up doing was by the time I got to LA, I had a whole bunch of stuff. And then I met a lot of people, and then they were willing to look at it and help. And that's when things really took off. So, biggest advice there is just do as much as you can on your own and just keep looking, and eventually you will find your people, to quote Mitchell's versus the Machine. Shout out to Sony and Mike Rianda, great guy. So that's the first one. Yeah. And then I'm trying to see if there was one. Maybe that was it. But that's just the biggest advice. It's just it gets really hard. Don't quit. You're gonna want to quit. I almost quit, I think, like 18 times when I was in LA, not even counting the times that I wasn't in LA. When I was like in LA, I was like, this is stupid. Why am I trying to work in cartoons? Why can't I, all of us have that cousin that has a real job doing real estate or something. And you're like, why wasn't I just doing that? Just keep going. It will eventually work out. It just might take longer than you think.
Yes.
That's my advice.
That's great.
Yeah.
Should we go over to, what do you think, Ange? Like attendee live Q&A stuff? What do you think?
Yeah, so I want to do those and also the Discords. But yeah, whichever questions we can field first.
Yeah. Max, are you there?
I am here, yeah.
Max is here. Hi, Max.
Hi. Hello. So this is the Q&A portion, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was curious, when you have a story that you feel is, have you ever had a story start to spin out on you? And what did you do to regain that thread? Like when you got caught in the weeds. Does that make sense?
Oh, it 100% makes sense. I guess, like, I always go back to, and this is so redundant, but like, what is the simplest version of the idea? So for me, if the story is just so that far away from me, it starts with like, what did I love about the story to begin with? Like, what was the thing that made me excited about telling the story? And is that still in the story, or am I so far away now that it's not even recognizable anymore? So I think it's like, we call it tracking. Like, it's really just distilling sort of like what the most inspiring, like what the point really of writing this thing was, and tracking that through your story. Like, is that coming through in the foundation that you've essentially crafted? Or looking back, is it lost within all of the pizzazz and the details and the minutia? And yeah, I think it's just sort of honing in on the specific of what that is, and then actually tracking it through that story and asking yourself whether it's still there.
Thank you, that helps a lot. I'll just say that for me, my spin out moments are usually when I logically think about this, I have to do this to justify and this to justify it, and then it turns into a logic problem rather than a creative fun time.
Absolutely. And I can't like relate to you more after you just said that. But I think what you also have to think of, there's like a lot of bad stuff that gets made that has really shitty logic. So if you're being that careful about your logic, like, we can make certain allowances for you as an audience to go on a journey and bypass certain like logic things if it's in service of telling the story and telling the right story. So I think try to get to the end, and if it's still bothering you, then like come back to it. But I think as a writer, like for me, it's always more important to push through and just get to the end before I wrap myself into the pretzel and try to figure out my way out of it. But yeah, I logic's a bitch. Like, what can I say? It's terrible. And if you're, a careful and attentive writer, like there's just no way around it. But I think you have to just be kind to yourself after a certain point and say, wow, I've seen a lot shittier things on TV, if I'm being honest, that did not take logic into account, and they got through the pipeline. And that's through, network executives, your writing room, the whole thing. So
Thank
I
you.
wanted to add, because it sounds like you might be a pantser who dives into your script before like plotting everything out maybe. And I figure out a lot of logic things in like the premise or outline. premise, at least on our show, was 1 page. So you are telling just the bare basic beats, making sure that all works. Outline is just 2 pages, having the scene headings in there and a little bit more information. So that's kind of nice because you get a bird's eye view of your entire script in only a couple or a few pages. Obviously, if it's your personal project, you could write as many pages as you want. But I think just working on the beats is very helpful. And it also, like, kind of going back to improv, and I know that you improvise, like if something's not logically working, ask yourself why, and then improvise an idea that meets that criteria, you know?
Love that suggestion. Thank you.
Does anyone else have anything to add to like Max's question?
I mean, the only other thing I would say is, you know, sometimes it's okay to walk away from it for a little bit, you know, depending. If it's your own personal project, obviously you can't do it when you have a deadline. But, you know, for me, like sometimes when, and I'm kind of like that, like I start to overthink things, especially with the character. I start to get into their head. Why are they doing this? You know, it's just that logic process. And then I give myself a headache. And I realize that sometimes I just need to walk away from it, you know, give myself some time, separation from that story, and then come back to it with fresher eyes.
Mm-hmm. It's such a good point. I'm learning from all of you as you're saying these things. I'm just like, yeah, it's your point is so well said. Just walk away from the thing for a while and then just go do something else. And eventually you can come back to it with fresh eyes. I think that's the way to go. And also, you know, just make it a part of your tone. Who cares about logic if it's in?
I love that.
Precisely.
Awesome. Thank you for all the suggestions.
Yeah, no problem. Anise, are you there? Do you want to ask your question to the panel? Thank you, Maximilian. You're the greatest looking man I've ever seen in my life.
Hi.
You honor me. Thank you.
Gosh. Good person.
Hi.
Hi, Anise. Hello, hello. Do you want to ask your question to the panel? Oh. Okay. I can ask it for her. Maybe she'll like kind of
All right.
log back on. Hi, Anise. Hello. You want to ask the question?
Oh, yay.
Sorry, I'm having
No worries. No
storm
worries.
over here.
No worries.
Yeah, so I asked a question in the chat about being a senior in college. I've gone to a couple of similar panels that have very much emphasized having an internship and have thus gotten increasingly worried about my not having had an internship yet. And so I guess that's sort of the place that I'm coming from, where I ask if you all have any recommendations. You guys have given a lot of great ones so far about like positions and finding them through networking rather than looking at job boards. And I guess I just wanted to reemphasize that, where coming up on this kind of intimidating moment of graduation, what should I be looking for in order to start off? And what should I be doing now to kind of buoy myself into what will be happening then?
Well, I think, first of all, what I mentioned about the agencies, I think that's a great job opportunity for people who are coming straight out of college to just be in a mailroom for a couple months and then get on a desk. That kind of opens all the doors. So if you're, you know, not even sure 100% that you want to just commit to animation, that obviously leaves the options open. There are definitely internships that are available to you after college if that's something that you're willing to do and forgo making an income. Not everybody can do, obviously. And then there are writing fellowships, a lot of which focus on diversity. And those are specifically there to sort of help get your foot in the door if it's Nickelodeon or Disney, at those specific companies, because that whole job is to field those people into other positions on their shows. So I think with animation, Angela could probably speak to this a little bit more, but my boss, Nikki, went from being in the Nickelodeon fellowship program to being a storyboard artist to eventually now having her own show. So I think there's a lot of upward mobility as far as finding those entry-level positions as PAs, as interns, as writing fellowship applicants, as production coordinators, and then sidelining basically from there into other things like storyboarding and writing assisting and all those kinds of jobs.
Yeah, and I'll jump on that. So everything Talia said is correct. And I think the two biggest things is just showing people that you have actually three things. First thing, do a good job at the job that you currently have so that people will want to promote you to the next thing. Second thing is gaining transferable skills. And the third thing is letting the powers that be know what your ultimate goals are. A big part of the reason why I was able to go from production to art and now moving from art to writing was I let my production managers and directors and recruiters at Nick and at other studios and my manager know that these are what my ultimate goals are. I'm going to do my very best at the job I currently have, but ultimately, I want to do storyboards and I want to do writing. And by the way, here are my samples. Because another problem too is people often say, I want to write, or I want to board, or I want to do whatever. And they say, oh, great. Do you have anything? And then people go, well, no, it's all in my mind. And that doesn't help. So make sure that when you're telling people that this is what you want to do, that you actually have the thing that you want to do, so that when they ask you, oh, we have a position open, or, oh, do you want to sit in the writer's room today and see what we do, which is something I got to do on Loud House and at Glitch Text, which helped with Santiago. Make sure you actually have something in hand. You don't want it to just be in your head.
That's good advice.
I met with someone when I came in early on, and this kind of applies to networking. And she was an executive at Paramount at the time, and was through college connection. I met this person, and she told me about networking. This might help. Is it's okay once you know someone and not even know them that well. It's okay to ask someone, if you're friendly and nice, for help getting a position that's really, really entry level. So if it's like, and in that case, she was indicating to me that I didn't pick up until now, that I should have asked her, hey, could you get me like a job in the mailroom? Could you get me a job, or could you send my resume to someone who could do that? I think that that people want to help you, as long as it's not having to writer's assistants, all these sorts of jobs, they're not entry-level positions. Once you become aware of that and go, what's the most entry-level position I can get? Ask someone who's above that position, is there a way that you can slip my resume to somebody? And you're friendly, I think that's very likely to happen. So hopefully that helps in any way.
I also want to piggyback on all this and say that you may end up going on a lot of interviews and getting rejected, but it's never personal. Sometimes there's like a personality fit, and like there's only so much personality that they can get out of an interview. So like don't take that with you or let that control your perception of yourself. There are plenty of people who make it into writers' rooms or into the various places they want to be without going through the assistant route. So I think pursue both, obviously be ready to like give your samples to someone to hire you as staff or freelance while you're looking for assistant roles, because sometimes things happen and happen really quickly, and sometimes it's a marathon, and it's not a sprint. So just be ready for it to take a while or to happen quickly, and it's annoying, but that's kind of how it is. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, and I'm like, this is chaotic. I'm just not going to try to understand all of it. But yeah, don't take these things personal. It's not a statement on who you are or your work, and you just kind of keep going.
How was that, Denise? To answer all your questions?
Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you all so much.
No problem.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks for joining us, Denise.
Yes,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Miles, do you wanna ask your question? Hey, buddy.
Yeah. Hey, good morning. Yeah, my question is real quick. I'll throw myself into the overseas lot here. I'm in Hawaii, and but I'll also include who
Oh, I'm
is
so.
on my mind. Yeah, yeah. All my friends and cohorts, like in Southeast Asia and so forth. So from our perspective, I wanted to ask the panel, do you see that there are new avenues to writing, to the writer's room, in this pandemic and even the post-pandemic landscape? We have an ocean to cross in a lot of cases, but maybe not so much. So if you could speak to that from our perspective, to address what that might take to cross the bridge for talent that's overseas.
Is your question about working during this time from overseas, or what is your question specifically?
Yeah,
about?
thank you for helping me clarify that. From my perspective, I'm a U.S. citizen, so sometimes there's not those barriers of visas and so forth. But so for some of my friends who are from different countries, sometimes that's one of the biggest hurdles. Like to just break into an entry-level position, not even just with writing, but there can be those visa issues. So if that's something you could speak to, like how to get into the ecosystem and on a if there is a pathway, like what are the breadcrumbs on that pathway if those are some of the hurdles to jump over? Like, is it a visa issue? Is there service work that it can do to get noticed to then, start to progress towards writing? If that's something that you could help with. If my question is way out of left field, then just toss it in the pile. I'm not maybe
No,
framing
I'm
it
just
the
trying to
best
think of
way.
how to answer because I'm from Puerto Rico, so I'm a U.S. citizen. So fortunately, I have never had to overcome an issue of a visa or just being international. I mean, I would say that probably the best advice I could give you is sort of starting. I mean, I worked in Mexico on a Netflix show, and I was the only American writer. I moved from LA to go write on that show for 3 months in Mexico City. And all of the writers there were pretty successful, prominent writers within the Mexican telenovela scene. And because companies like Netflix are becoming more international, they now have offices in all of these like big cities, and they're basically sourcing material directly from there. And truthfully, transparently paying those people less money, obviously, and buying up that content and then distributing it on those platforms. So what that says to me is that places like Brazil, like Spain, like Mexico, who have proven to be huge markets specifically and are making content that transcends language, now have the presence of these big companies like Amazon and Netflix, just like developing shows directly on the ground there. So if you can focus first on kind of rising through the rungs of the local content there and working on development and in rooms for shows that are local language shows that are going to be distributed on those platforms, then you can make the more credible leap, I think, to working on like an American Netflix show because you've already worked on a Netflix show, just specifically within that country. So I think I can't speak specifically to Hawaii, but I would say, yeah, more and more like through globalization and just what's happening with the content wars, like there's just so many different opportunities to be writers in different cities around the world. And if you can be a big fish in a small pond there, it's much easier to transcend into doing development and to joining rooms here, if that's what the ultimate goal is.
I also recommend looking at podcasts to see if anyone who isn't from America, how they manage to work here. I think both Angela's podcast and my podcast had Nori Kim and Yvonne Schwanho come on and talk about their visa process. I'm sure there's like slightly different information in each, pretty much the same process, right? So definitely listen to those. Yeah, I had something else, but I forgot what it was. So sorry. Oh, I was gonna say because I spoke with someone from South America recently, and they were saying that while they could freelance, they couldn't be staff unless they were like sponsored by a company. So yeah, that's definitely an obstacle to get through. But at least freelance is possible, I guess.
That's true, Cassie. I will say though, if you make it up the rungs to a mid-level position or upper-level position, then obviously they're looking at people like you that authentically represent a point of view that is not currently on television. And so you're going to be given an opportunity inherently just because of your unique identity. And that's, like the short way of saying that, like, diverse people are getting opportunities at a more accelerated rate because there's a demand for those stories, but we're not being historically promoted to those upper level rungs. So the people that are sort of able to meet that criteria are few and far between. So right now the challenge is like getting more people to be participating and up the ladder so that there's more talent to choose from and more talent to be represented. So I think if you can focus on becoming a big fish in a small pond and ascending to a rank that is recognizable, then development here becomes much easier.
If you can produce a piece of your work, that would be a great way to kind of, because if everyone's writing scripts, then what's like one more step that you could do to kind of just be right ahead of them a little bit, So yeah.
I'm kind of curious, and I know we usually wouldn't ask a question, but Miles, what is it that you want to do? Because I kind of want to get a better understanding of, what your goal is, and maybe that'll help.
Yeah, personally, my goal is to get my stuff developed. To get my own series stuff developed. And but I lean heavily toward the writer's side. I don't I don't do art. I don't do storyboarding. I'm by a busy street, so if that filters in, I'm sorry for the road noise.
No worries.
Where we live, yeah. So that for me personally, Jeannette, that's my perspective, is the ultimate goal. Yeah.
And do you just want to do writing for like any medium, like live action, animation, or
Animation.
Do you have
Animation. Yeah.
I mean, that's where I would definitely lean in back to the networking as well. Because something that I learned during the pandemic, I have a lot of friends that, they've actually risen up just as, as I start to get positions, I see that they're also getting positions. And I remember one of my friends reaching out saying, "Hey, do you know any Brazilian writers?" And I was like, "No." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know any Brazilian writers. How is this possible?" And so it made me consciously start to network with other writers, especially if they have like a diverse background. The thing with me saying that is that you never know who you're going to talk to that, comes back and actually that was the way I landed on Alma's Way. I was in a room with all these writers, and one of them remembered me because they said, "Hey, can you get us a Latinx writer? Who would you recommend?" And she's like, "Jeannette," out of the whole room. So it made me have this conscious effort of wanting to network with even more writers, because most of my network were artists, because I love artists. And again, like you never know who's gonna start thinking, "Oh, wait a second. Yeah, I spoke with this Miles guy. He's in Hawaii. Hey, yeah, like I can recommend this writer," So that's another way, piggybacking off of, everyone else's advice.
Thank you. That's awesome. All of you. Thank you so much.
Good luck, man.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Hey, yeah.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. Thanks for doing this, you guys.
Yeah. Thank you, Miles. And do you want to go to the Discord question?
I do, because I'm answering the other questions in the Q&A. So let's go to our wonderful Rise Up Animation Discord mentees and see if they are here and we can answer their questions.
Okay. Sorry, Angela? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Usernames that I can bring up? Oh, you're on mute-ish.
All right. So the first one we have Mia. Do you want me to
Mia?
do you want me to go ahead and read her question, or are we asking to see if she's here first?
I don't think she's here. Mia, hello? Are you here? Ish.
Okay.
You can ask.
Okay. So, her question was, what are some best practices to drive creativity for making new stories?
Go out and live is my favorite one. Watch the genres of things you love, ask yourself why, and see if there's a story from your experience or just something, because sometimes I just like wallow in emotions. So it's not necessarily something from my past, but it's an emotion that I want to explore, and then I kind of craft the pieces to do that. Or it could be about a childhood memory as well, or things you're scared of, picking up on big themes. You can start to develop things to kind of fulfill those pieces that you need to like write a story. So I feel like anything can become a pilot or any kind of story.
Very cool. Thank you. And then let's do rapid fire here. So Basola has a good question. Basola, I think you're here because I saw you in the chat. Are you here? Are you still here? Because if you are, we could just have you go live. Oh, there she is. All right. Hey.
Oh, hello.
Hi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good.
Good.
So my question was deleted from the Discord, so I don't remember.
Oh, that's okay. You know what?
Sorry.
Let me put it in the chat because you had a really good question, which was what are some common mistakes you see in scripts?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is proofreading. Like, honestly, like it just tells me that you don't care as much about your work and you're messy if I read through a script and in the first few pages there are a bunch of typos, like it's just, again, protect your art. Like, you finish the process, like go back and reread the whole thing. Don't just run the spell check, reread the whole thing and actually make sure you've combed through it, because I think that just shows dedication and devotion to what you do. And I not to say one can't slip in there. I'm just saying, like, I read a lot of scripts where there are a lot of typos and it really does irritate me.
Yeah. For like international writers who are trying to break into the US industry, who maybe aren't as fluent in English, is it common to see like them hire editors, like outside editors to look through their scripts, or is that something that's not recommended?
Well, I would say write the script in the language that you dominate and then pay somebody to translate it. And then obviously make sure to go through that translation. But I've actually done translation work in the past for writers who predominantly speak Spanish. And I think that that's better because ultimately, if you're trying to work here, everything that you're gonna read and send to an executive is going to be in English. So you might as well write it in a language that you feel most competent in, and then hire somebody whose job it is to translate scripts to translate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Much appreciated. So then next awesome person we have from the Discord is K Park. K Park, are you here?
Maybe not. K Park, hello? Maybe? If you don't mind, can we go to Khalil?
Not at all. Khalil, you are here. Go ahead.
In the building.
Come on in.
Hello. What's up, man?
Hey,
hello.
Hi.
So, yeah, my question was basically my thing. I don't have the question in front of me. I'm gonna have to try to remember. I wrote it so well, and
I can put it in the chat
exactly what I
if you
wrote.
like.
Well, I'll say it and then I'll put it in the chat. So basically, when it comes to writing and like scripts and stories and stuff, have you ever written something and you were a really big fan of what you wrote, well, then maybe a beta reader or somebody who reads it and it's like, oh, this actually seems kind of a lot like some other story. And basically you're just thinking, oh my gosh, did I just accidentally like plagiarize or whatever? Like I worry about that sometimes. And, I'm just wondering how to really, if that, number one, if that's something that I should worry about. And number two, just in general, how to inject originality into your scripts,
That's amazing. I love that. That speaks to like all of us, like writers or artists or anything like that. Go ahead, panel.
I mean, the great Picasso said, good artists copy, great artists steal. So I think every work at this point is derivative, so you cannot be afraid of it feeling like something else. Because if you get really granular with it, yeah, like at some point it is comparable to, some other work. I think the way, this is the cliche, guys, but like the way that you infuse it with originality is specificity. The more specific it is because of who you are, and the way you speak and the people you spend time with and surround yourself with and the places you've been to, like the more you infuse it with all of those things, the more it's just cannot be like anything else. That's just how it works, honestly. But yeah, as far as like comparing to like genre or like themes, like there's always going to be some other greater story. I mean, like I think every story at its core is like derivative of Shakespeare. If you really think of it, the man wrote like 300 plus plays, and basically all melodrama, I think, kind of stems from there. And then originally Greek tragedy. So if you go as far back, it's like, stories are just recycled consistently. So yeah, I think it's just all about channeling who you are and trying to bring as much of that to the work as possible.
Definitely agree with everything Talia is saying. I also wanted to say, like, when you go out and start pitching, they're going to ask you for comps, like what, like 2 to 3 shows or movies is this like? So it's going to happen, and just embrace it for sure.
Interesting.
Yeah, I would gonna make a different analogy, but it's think about cover songs. You probably have a favorite song that you've heard out there, and then all of a sudden, a parent of yours comes up, that's not an original song. Like this artist sang that like 20 years ago. But there's something about that artist that actually draws you, and each artist is going to put their own spin on that song. So there's nothing new under the sun, but the way you execute it can definitely be different.
Yeah, I all of that totally is correct, and I piggyback on all of that. The thing about like if someone sees your work as potentially derivative, it's just has more to do with the person that's reading it than your actual work. And I think if you surround yourself or get multiple opinions on it, you'll find that everyone has a different idea about it. So yeah, if another thing that I like to do is think of characters in terms of people I know, and people I know aren't people that are on TV. So it's like it's a thing of like, oh yeah, this is who this person is. But yeah, be careful where you get your criticism from, especially.
Aman, I think that's a really good point. Honestly, I really think that's great because honestly, I think some people think like, oh, I'm developing a Disney princess thing and it should go to Disney because Disney princesses, I mean, obviously. But sometimes what you should be doing is sort of the actual opposite of that, of like, let me take the Disney princess idea to the offbeat production company that's never done anything like this. Because ultimately, all of these production companies and all these studios are looking for things that they haven't made, and they're looking to fill niches of things, of spaces they feel like they haven't inhabited. So sometimes it's actually counterproductive to create something, the perfect thing for that very specific place that you want it to be at. And it's just better served to just like make the thing you want to make and take it out to a place that might feel unconventional, because ultimately every single place is looking for unconventional. That's what they're looking for. They don't want to repeat.
And something else, like Talia, there's something that Talia said about authenticity as well. And like I wrote this story that basically has to do about this girl going through puberty, you know? And that was right before Big Mouth aired. So talk about something that you're like, oh my goodness. But then when you start to take them both apart, you know, authenticity, what did I use that was different from Big Mouth, is that I'm telling it from, you know, solely the perspective of this girl, but also, you know, as a kid, I lived in Japan, and then I'm also Puerto Rican. So I took those two cultures and meshed it in to actually tell this story about this girl trying to figure out her own identity. So yes, there's definitely ways around it. And, you know, sometimes they may sound like the same story, but again, I always go back to execution, you know, and it's so subjective too. You know, I think that's what everyone is agreeing on, that, you know, criticism is just so subjective. I may not like something, but the person, you know, somebody else might read and be like, this is wonderful.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you very much for, you know, I really do think that being, you know, being cognizant of the people that critique your work is important to me, because like, you know, it's, well, you need to know somebody who knows exactly what you're trying to get at, you know, in a lot of ways. But yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah. Khalil, thank you, man. Thank you for your question. Alexander, do you have a question? What's up, buddy? It's good to see you.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, good, man.
Pretty good. The question was kind of answered. I was asking, does storyboarding enhance your writing? And then I guess the other question that I had was, what other activities do you do as a writer outside of reading scripts? Do you like try to read scripts and storyboard? What are other tropes? Because I like to draw. I mean, I'm on the character design, visual animation development part of it, but I like writing too, because I think the story is so important. That's what draws us all together and connects us. So are there any other activities that you can do to just enhance kind of both?
I mean, I do mood boarding sometimes, which I definitely recommend. And I think that like now that a lot of pitches are over Zoom, like there are accompanying visuals that happen for all of those pitches, whether that's the production company that you're working on that piece of development with, coming up with those visuals in that presentation, or you doing that, or some combination of both. There's a lot of that going on. So it's, you know, taking stills from movies that tonally look like what you're going for visually, you know, taking pieces of artwork that are representing in some way sort of the visual like aesthetic of what it is you're doing, just like taking things like that are conveying themes and character and feel just through visuals. So yeah, I think that's becoming more and more a part of just the presentations and the development process itself, just because now that everything is virtual, it's like, how do you capture people's attention? You know, can't be talking for 20 minutes without some kind of accompanying video or image.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too, because what I do is, along with boards, is I do a lot of, and this is not something that every writer needs to do, but if you're on the more visual side and like, you know, Alex was saying, if you like design and whatnot, I tend to do character designs of all the characters that I write about in my scripts because it's fun for me to do that. So I like designing the characters, I like designing the backgrounds, I like designing the worlds. And to Talia's point, I screenshot a lot of scenes from movies that have backgrounds or have emotion that I feel is similar or what I'm going for in my own stories. So I have a ton of files on my computer of just scenes from movies. You know, I look at color palettes a lot of times to figure out what things are going to look like. I take a lot of pictures of random stuff on my phone that if you were to look at my phone, you're like, why did she take a picture of this? I know why I took a picture of it, and it helps me. So basically anything that I feel like will enhance who the characters are, what the world looks like, or will just remind me of something that if I'm not able to write it down right then, it'll remind me the way that my mind works as soon as I get home and have a piece of paper. So those are things that I like to do.
I would also add like creating a music playlist. Maybe someone already said this. I'm so sorry if I'm repeating, but a music playlist that has the vibe of what you want. Yeah. Sometimes if I'm like doing a genre piece, I'll go and like binge watch a ton of my favorite in that genre to get like the vibe just like ingrained as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, where did he go?
I think he got disconnected. I think he wrote something in the chat.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Cool. So do we want to we're closing in at like 1 o'clock, and just to respect your time, Andre, do you want to come on? Angela, we can go after like Andre, but.
Yeah, I definitely want to answer Andre's. I want folks to be able to answer Andre's question because he's been very patient.
Thank
and
you.
he has two really good questions here. Yeah, so go for it, Andre.
Andre, come on, man.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. So my first question was about the path that leads to writing, because I've been in a lot of workshops for my university on England and stuff, and they all talk about the path they took. They started on animation, they started on everything but writing, and then they got the passion for writing, and then they passed from where they were to writing. And my question is, do I need to pass through all this stuff, or I can just focus on my writing and put my voice out there and hope for someone to attend to? Something like that.
The answer is honestly no. The answer is, even if you're the most amazing writer in the world, no one is just going to take a look at a script with no working experience under you and say, let's go make this movie and here's $50 million. It's just not going to happen. So the practical way of sort of tackling it is through figuring out what the least paths of resistance really is, if you are so clear on the fact that you want to be a writer. And in my humble opinion, I think that comes from being an assistant either on a production or in a management / studio system, and then going from there into being a writer's assistant, which is being in the room in that assistant role. And then once you're in the room, if you're doing a good enough job and you're meeting enough people, that's sort of how it takes off into actual writing. And you obviously have to have a body of work to back up your work ethic, but it really does come from being exposed to those people that are going to give you those opportunities because they recognize your work ethic and have worked with you and are giving you that recommendation, and because you then have the talent and the sample to back up the work ethic.
Okay. So start below and then going up on the industry. Okay.
Yeah, you can bypass steps on the ladder by being super talented and having great pieces of work, but you're gonna definitely have to be working those jobs and aspiring to those positions in order to eventually be developing your own stuff.
Okay, that was really helpful.
I was going to say, I've also seen people collaborating outside the Hollywood studio structure, like improv and sketch comedy. There's people who are always making things together there. If someone gets an opportunity, whether they were an assistant working up themselves, sometimes they'll reach out and be like, who has samples? So you obviously have to be ready for those opportunities. But if you're not around like a studio or someplace that'll hire you, see if there's other folks in your community who are making things and start collaborating. See if they need like a PA on the weekend or a script coordinator, and you can start getting experience that way as well.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. The to piggyback on Cassie's point and Talia's point, it's the community and being around the people who can potentially put you in that position is the most important thing. I didn't go the path of working as an assistant and doing all that. I went through the path of what Cassie was saying, being around comedy people and just being around people who are making things. If that was something you liked to do and was interested in doing, that has its own sort of trajectory. If you're not that type of person, and you want to learn the innards of the industry, then yeah, definitely just start from the bottom and get those assistant jobs and work your way through. I feel like folks who come that route have such a stronger sense of how everything works, as opposed to me where I'm playing catch up and going, oh, okay, so that's what that means. Or I'll just sit and listen to certain words and then look it up. Yeah, cool.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Yeah, my second question is about the portfolio, because I was on my university, I was making art, and that is easy. Just put a bunch of art on the page and instant. But for writing, how can I make a portfolio for writing? I was thinking on a website and putting some quotes or from short stories and stuff, but I don't know. I don't know how to make a piece of portfolio to show for those opportunities.
Right. You know, I've actually heard recently, which is I'm not of the school of thought where you should be putting your material online when it comes to writing. It's just very different. But I heard from about some universities where they were recommending, you know, put your writing sample online. Honestly, it's not something I would recommend. I don't know how everyone else, you know, on the panel would feel about that, but if anything, what you can do, and I think, and I've looked up like some of the websites that, you know, other writers, like Cassie has a really good one. You should really check it out. And, you know, and Angela. And what they'll do is, like, you know, if somebody's interested in your writing, right, they can always request it and just know who's requesting it. Personally, like, that's why I say I don't put any of my material up. But then again, I also have managers that can actually, you know, send those, you know, scripts over to anyone that might be requesting it that is serious about it too. But I don't know how everyone else feels.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Writers Guild is probably the only place you should be uploading your work for people to just openly download and read. But I will say it sounds like you're pretty entry level. So I think you want to have at least 2 pilots, and 2 pilots are 2 first episodes of a television series, whether that's a half hour, whether that's an hour. A half hour usually runs somewhere between like 22 to 33 pages, depending on whether we're talking about like 20-minute broadcast network or, you know, full 30-minute cable streaming. An hour usually runs somewhere around 54 to like 64, 65 pages. So I would say, I think there was a question about this on the chat. Like, if you're talking about writing fellowships and applying to programs, they want to put you in a box. So you should write 2 pieces of writing that are very similar, either tonally, either, you know, like thematically speaking, like, also that means, like, if it's a half hour, 2 half hours, if it's an hour, 2 hours, because the executives are very black and white, and it's just, they want to know where to put you and what to do with you and how they can serve you. And that's it. So they don't want to know that you're versatile. They don't want to know that you're incredible. They don't really care. So when it's talking about like sharing your work with like representation and like possible like executives that you want to work and develop for, like, I think those 2 things should be whatever you want them to be. So there are no rules. They can be as diverse as you want them to be. There's no construct or confines really. But yeah, 2 generally safe to say is probably the launching pad of what you want to have as far as a portfolio.
Agree with everything that's being said. I wanted to say, in terms of sharing your work on your website, I don't think there's anything wrong with writing a sample knowing that you're going to put it on your website, but don't expect to like go and pitch it afterwards, because then it's already public and everything. And it should be one that is there to, you know, represent your skill and what you could bring. You don't have to put the whole script up either, because I mean, if you don't have the network yet, and there is a chance that people might check out your website but don't have no reason to request it professionally, because I've seen a few like up and coming writers with samples on their website, and I've always been told not to put mine on. So I definitely agree with like once you have representation, like, you know, all that stuff can get you work. But in terms of meeting other writers, like it might be helpful. But just know that it's there to network and to get people to recognize that you have a skill that they should watch out for.
Okay, yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Thanks for your question.
Yes, thank you.
What do you think, Ange? How you feeling?
I feel really good, actually. So we can either end now. But we have one last question in the Q&A, and then I think we should
Let's
call
just do it. Let's take the last one.
Yeah, I think we
might as
should,
well.
because otherwise there'll be a flood. But this is one I get a lot. I've heard a lot on podcasts and whatnot. So it's an anonymous attendee. So whoever you are, thank you for asking your question. And they asked, how can one protect their work before pitching it to people or networking? Is there anything to be done other than it being written as a physical form? So basically, how do you protect your stuff from people stealing your stuff? You guys have,
you know,
Jeannette, you have thoughts. What are your thoughts?
You know, I remember when I started my writing career that it was very much like, didn't want to share my work, didn't want to, you know, I was very hesitant to even pitch it because I'm like, they're going to steal my idea if I pitch this great idea, right? And then you find out that there's loopholes through everything. So as far as protecting your work, like if it's like you're talking about, you know, you've created something, a file, I think Talia mentioned it, like you could register it with the WGA, but you can also do Library of Congress, which is like copyrighted. Even then, there's still ways around that, you know. So I think, and I don't know if you're thinking about it from the perspective of, you know, you want to go out and pitch a bunch of things and see if it picks up and make sure that, you know, a network doesn't or a studio doesn't steal it, or if you're talking about just for, you know, among friends and all that. I think that in this community, especially with animation, it's such a small community. People know each other. I almost felt like you have to get past that mentality of somebody's going to steal my work. I think you just have to try to put yourself out there. I mean, it's okay to be cautious, but at the same time, people really do want to help you, and they want you to be successful. And again, like, I think this is something we mentioned throughout the panel, is like, there's really no new idea under the sun. You know, it's just, there's just different ways, there's variations of it. I don't know what my colleagues here would say, but I'll popcorn it back to them.
Yeah, I would just add to that if you're in a position where you're developing with someone already, whether that's your original idea or you're being brought in to service a piece of IP, which is intellectual property for those of you guys who don't know, that means like adapting a book or a podcast or an article. If there is a paper trail, aka emails between you and these people, and you're giving them pages and stuff, then that is your intellectual property. So if they turn around and say, we're not developing it, we're not taking it out this year for X and Y reason, and next year they go out and they develop basically the exact same idea with another writer, and that writer is more credible, and it's the path of least resistance as far as selling it and getting developed, then you do have like a standing to be able to pursue some kind of legal action, or, you know, go after and protect your work. Barring that, it really is, as Jeannette is saying, it's such a crapshoot, just because like intellectual property, like what is it? You know, like we just spoke to that idea that like everything is redundant and derivative. So it's like so hard to protect something and say like that was exactly mine and they took it, and then proving that thread and that connection. So I would just say, unless there really is that paper trail and you were developing something specific for this company and then they turned around and did the exact same thing with somebody else, then there's really no way of going about
Oh,
Wanted to add.
shit. Oh, no.
Oh,
Cassie, go.
I was gonna
Go
say
for it.
because I read a bunch of scripts from strangers last year, and some people, just to give them peace of mind, I feel like probably they put a watermark of their name across the pages. I wouldn't suggest that for like actually giving it to a story editor or EP to read, but like if you're just getting feedback, that's one way to do it, because no matter if they send it to other people, your name's on it or their name's on it, so you know exactly where it leaked. So yeah, whoever you're sending it to, put their name on it so it's traceable to who did it.
Cool.
That is excellent. Thanks. And I'm going to call it. You guys, we did it.
Yo,
Thank you.
we did it, guys.
Thank you so much.
Man, our first writing webinar. Thank you everyone so much for coming. Jeannette, Talia, Cassie.
Oh, such a pleasure.
Man,
This is great. Yeah.
amazing. That was such like invaluable advice and very inspiring, very encouraging, and so we really appreciate your time and effort, and hopefully, beyond this whole like quarantine thing, hopefully we can run into each other at some point and just talk shop, and how fun that was. And so we really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
For having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And good luck with everything, guys. I mean, you guys are, it seems like everybody has like 5 things in the kiln. And doing more, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the answer. Yes, you should be.
Yeah, that honestly, I don't think we touched upon that, but that is absolutely the trademark of writers. You need to have like 10 different projects going on.
And that's wonderful advice. Yeah,
at once.
for real.
For 2 to make it through. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I want to give a shout out to everybody on the panel. Thank you to everybody who asked questions live and in the chat and in the Q&A. Thank you. And just want to give a shout out to Rise Up Animation. If you have any other questions, if you are, join Rise Up Animation. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, did you want to say it, Bobby? You want to say it? You want to do the thing?
Yeah, if you have any other questions, email Aman. Here's his email. Whether it's professional or personal or just like, financial advice, he's down for it.
That's right. Oh, Aman, you're on mute. You're on mute. You got to tell them all about your financial
Sorry, Angela.
tips and tricks.
Yes,
401k advice.
Please. If you want to know if it's a fungus or something, just send it on. I'll let you know.
Send pictures. It's like, I got this rash. What is this?
Yeah, what kind of STD is it?
Oh my gosh.
Aman knows.
We're getting really real. Yeah, and if you want more writing advice or anything else like that, check out Rise Up Animation. You can sign up for a mentor. If you're a part of the Rise Up Animation community, we have a Discord, Ask Your Mentor. Also, join Latinx, join Women in Animation, join Asians in Animation, join Black and Animated. You can join as a member of those groups or as an ally. There are wonderful people out there who are professionals, aspiring professionals, who want to help, who want to work with you, who can answer your questions. We want everybody to be able to succeed and get a job. So you are not alone. No matter where you live, there's somebody else out there who wants to talk to you and help you. You just gotta put yourself out there and find them. So
I do want to
get that seat at the table.
Yeah. And you know what? Or build that table. Build it yourself. Make your own table if you have to.
And I wanted to add latinxinanimation.org. It's free to sign up for. You don't have to pay for membership. So just letting you guys know.
Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Latinx is free. Asians in Animation is free. Rise Up is free. Black and Animated is free.
Yeah.
Save your money. Save your money for Final Draft software. So, yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
Hard tables are hard to make, Leanne, but they're not impossible. It's not impossible. You just gotta get your people. Yeah.
I think that was a perfect closing, Angela. And so thank you everyone again for coming. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, attendees. And so I hope you guys have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Bye,
guys. Thank you, guys.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Bye, guys. Bye, everybody. See ya.